know you're worried about homeschooling high school, but you really can do it. It's easy. I'm here with my oldest daughter, Rachel, who graduated from our homeschool in 2018. She always used Sonlight, and she's going to tell you a little bit about how Sonlight prepared her to be a grown-up.
One way that Sonlight helped me transfer into adulthood was learning how to manage my time independently in high school with my own instructor's guide and being able to see my to-do list every day. I was really able to practice managing my own time and getting things done when it needed to. And as I transferred into dual enrolling in the last years of high school and then going to Bible school after graduation, I saw a lot of my other friends not have that skill, and I was really thankful to have practiced that at home.
Hi, I'm one of the mentors here on the app, and my name is Sheila, and I homeschooled 3 kids, and today I have Timothy with me. He's my middle child. I'll let him talk about himself.
Hi, I did homeschooling with Sonlight, K through 12, graduated high school in 2016, and now I work as a mechanical engineer. And I'm going to talk to you about how Sonlight has helped me into adulthood. I think one of the biggest things that I see people my age and in general struggle with right now is critical thinking skills, especially in terms of like media literacy and just not believing everything that you see online. I think it's really important that homeschooling and Sonlight stresses reading and then thinking and really processing through what you're learning about and the things that you're seeing, especially just because it's so easy to just blindly consume in this day and age of, infinite media. I think it's really important for people to be able to, problem solve, think through things, and especially with things that they see online, think, does that make sense? Where else can I learn about this? And just being resourceful enough to really think through other ways that they could learn about a subject, or really think through whether or not that makes sense, and should it be criticized, should it be, doubted, or should you be skeptical when you're reading things? I think that's really important. And that's something that I think we definitely learned a lot of, was reading and then thinking and talking about it and scrutinizing things and making sure that it really made sense to us.
So I asked my oldest son, who is my 3rd child, what was his favorite thing about doing high school through Sonlight. And he is currently a junior in college. He goes to Liberty University. And he said, Mom, right off the top of my head, my first answer would be, I love to read. I love to read books. I don't find very many other people around me my age whose go-to is reading. Homeschooling through high school has allowed my children to read so much for learning history and for the great depth of literature. I just don't even know a better way to teach history than how Sonlight does it with the reading. I'm just so grateful. And if you ask my 3 who've already graduated, they might all give you different answers, but that was my Josiah's answer right off the top of his head. If you're considering homeschooling through high school, Sonlight is a great option. We're so grateful we've done it. And don't be afraid if your child is an extrovert. Josiah is a huge extrovert. But hanging out with people doesn't only happen during school hours, So we found outlets for his need to be with people, lots of other ways. You can do this, and homeschooling with Sonlight through high school has been a fantastic choice for us.
Hi, I'm Amber's oldest daughter, Stephanie, and Mom asked me to share a few things about why I loved homeschooling through high school with Sonlight. I am now 7 years post-high school graduation and have achieved a college degree and a master's degree since my high school graduation, and I really feel like Sonlight propelled me towards both of my degrees because it taught me how to think critically and achieve independently. In college, I wasn't reliant on my professors. I knew how to get information and make it my own, process it, and then produce quality work that they really enjoyed and were impressed by. And that has continued into my career, where my bosses, my peers, my mentors at work are consistently impressed by the level of work that I can produce because I am able to do what I was trained to do with Sonlight, is take large amounts of information and process them well, and also to do that on my own. So I'm very thankful for my education with Sonlight.
I am here today with my oldest daughter, and we are talking about homeschool, high school, how to, and all my kids have graduated at this time, but I invited Michaela to come and join and talk to you guys about what's her favorite part of being homeschooled in high school. Michaela?
Hi, I'm Michaela Last now. I was formerly in Lawrence. I was homeschooled K through 12 with Sonlight the entire time. I graduated high school in 2015 and went to Auburn University, and then graduated from there in summer of 2018. And I'm so excited to get to be here and share with y'all today.
So Michaela, can you tell them what was your favorite thing about using Sonlight and how it prepared you for after high school?
Yeah, so I loved reading as a student, and so Sonlight is very literature based, and I use that a lot in my college. Like, I loved reading the books, and I took a couple Brit-Lit classes in college, and I loved those. And so that was, I think, my favorite part. And I enjoy writing, and there's a lot of writing in Sonlight. I didn't love the actual academic writing of it. I'm more of a fun writer, but it was still good, and I feel like equipped me a lot for what I needed.
So do you think that there is anything, so you use Sonlight all the way through, is there anything that you felt like you lacked when you went to college that you didn't have?
If only thing was my mom wasn't right beside me. So I lacked my mother being my encourager and my teammate, my partner, my teacher in classes. And so that was, I think, the only thing I lacked when I went to college, is she wasn't there anymore. I was all on my own. But
I do remember your freshman or sophomore year, you called me and asked me if I could read aloud one of your textbooks. It did my heart good.
Yes, I just needed that companionship. I could do it. I just needed a pal. So, but aside from that, I felt very well equipped. I don't feel like Sonlight missed anything in equipping me for college.
Is there anything you would want to tell mamas who are wondering if they should do Sonlight in high school?
I would encourage you to at least try. I really loved it, and I really enjoyed it, and I felt like it taught a lot of the skills that I would have I needed in college and even beyond. Like, I've used some of the same principles now. Like, I have a 1-year-old, so it's not the same, but I am we are very literature based in this house. We read a lot. She loves to read, and so that love of reading has carried on from Sonlight, from college to now in my adult life.
Yep, and I'm looking forward to Corey being a future Sonlighter. So,
yes.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks. Bye.
Hi, I'm being joined today by my oldest child, my daughter, and she is technically in 8th grade this year, but we are doing her first Sonlight high school program. She is doing level 100 this year instead of a middle school program. So, sweetie, why did we decide to do a high school program in 8th grade?
So we had done all of the middle school programs other than J, and I prefer American history to just science in general, so I just wanted to do more history.
Yeah, and also if you look in the Sonlight catalog or on our website, you'll see that there are 5 Sonlight high school history programs and 6 language arts literature programs. So there's no way to fit all of that in just in the 4 years of high school. So if you have a child that is motivated and interested in those topics, perhaps more than a middle school topic, that is an option in 8th grade. What do you like best about doing a high school program over some of the younger years?
I like that we have our own IG that gives us the questions without the answers and the assignments.
And so how do you use your own IG to get your work done? I don't sit with her or tell her what to do when it comes to school anymore at all. So how do you use that IG to teach yourself?
So basically, I just open the IG, look at how many chapters I need to read those chapters, and then write down the answers to the questions. And I am a night owl, so I like to do this on my own schedule and take my books up to my bedroom and do it late at night and then just sleep later. And so then I get to do fun stuff during the day.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for teens to get their rest. In our house, we're all a family of night owls, so this has never bothered me that my kids like to stay up late and sleep in. And then we meet later on, usually the next day or the day after that during the week, and we have some really great discussions. I love American history myself, and so we've had a blast, you know, talking about the books she's reading. She's reading so many classics this year and has said that those are some of her favorite books. Anything else you want to say about Sonlight High School?
You think it's going to be harder than it actually is. It just seems more intimidating because of the amount of books, and it's a high school program.
It's a gradual transition. If you've used Sonlight for any time at all, you're already kind of used to that format, so it's pretty easy. But I also have a parent IG with all the answers to the questions in her IG, as well as a few more notes to help us in the discussion piece. But I'm very confident in the fact that I will be able to teach her all the way through high school. She's learning a lot of it herself, and so I think when she does graduate and move out, she will be fully prepared for everything she needs in the future.
So our topic is high school. I remember as high school approached in our homeschool, I got rather nervous. I was nervous about the thought of making transcripts. I was nervous about the thought of hindering my kids' plans for the future. After all, I had been their teacher for all these years, and I won't forget that feeling as those high school years approach, because they are important. It's transcript time. It's time for them to prepare for their future. And so what did I do? I talked to some moms that had already been there and done that. And after that, I felt so much more confident that we really could do this thing. And so high school came. And I found it to be an amazing time where I became more of a mentor to my kids during their homeschool journey. And I got to see them become independent and responsible for the work that they were doing. They had their own student guide to follow now, and they were able to come up with their plan for the day to get everything accomplished that they needed to have done. And I still have one in high school, and she is successfully managing school and sports and a part-time job. And I have one who is finishing up his first semester as a freshman in college, and it has been a very successful semester. So I'm just here to let you know that the process does work, and that if I can do it, you all can do it too. High school is not something to be afraid of. I did have them prep for the ACT, as part of college, but the typical, school experience is definitely different with Sonlight. Having the freedom and the time to explore your interests are what is going to get you there and enable your kids to see what they love to do and what they're interested in. And homeschooling with Sonlight allows you the freedom to do that.
Years ago, when my oldest was in middle school, and we just were thinking about this idea of homeschooling in high school, if you had asked me for one adjective to describe that whole idea of homeschooling in high school, I would have said probably something like intimidating. Years later now, at this stage, we have homeschooled for 4 years with our oldest for high school. He started in first grade, but for high school, 4 years. For our second oldest, it's been 3.5 years because he's a senior. And then for our next son, it has been 1.5 years because he is a sophomore. And at this stage, the adjectives that I would use instead of intimidating are fun, interesting, valuable, so valuable, and irreplaceable. Our oldest, I'll start with him. He's Caleb. There's a separate video with him. He is away at school, and he'll tell you more about what he's studying and all of that. But from our perspective, we hear back from him, and it's great to see he loves people. He's a compassionate person. We see him getting involved in a small group at church that he's helping to lead children on Sundays with another student from the university. And he's filled with just stories and fun about that. He loves campus life, and it's challenging, but he is up for the challenge and he's enjoying it. And Sonlight prepared him where he was ready for that. My next oldest is, he's considering learning about focusing on maybe computers or business. Sonlight helped teach him to read Sonlight helped us through vocabulary, when his vocabulary growth and understanding, and to the point where now in high school we're sitting down, or he's reading on his own and then coming and bringing really deep questions that we can talk about together, and it's amazing to me as a mom. Our next son is a sophomore this year, and he left me these notes. I am in the process of reading at least 21 books for fun. I already have 24 books on my favorite shelf, along with many others. So he is a sophomore this year, and he loves to read. He is his mother's son, and he's definitely a Sonlight kid. He loves writing, and he's been very much prepared by Sonlight, and is inspired by what he reads. Our youngest is in 8th grade. He's just starting with some courses this year in high school, and more to go. So I still have fun ahead. And so yes, fun, interesting, valuable, irreplaceable. Those are the ways that I would describe high school now.
Hey, I'm Caleb, and I homeschooled with Sonlight from 1st grade all the way through high school graduation. And now I'm a sophomore in college, majoring in biology and minoring in chemistry and psychology. And Sonlight was a really big part of my preparation for college, and making sure that I was ready and prepared and for the workload that comes with college. So all the reading in Sonlight was a really good preparation for college. And one of my favorite books that I read with Sonlight during high school was Peace Child. It was a really good book that really kept me engaged and interested. And like, Sonlight has so many books like that, and you can't count how many they have that are like that. And they've just been a really big part of preparing me for college. And college has come with a lot of really cool opportunities, like being able to run cross country for my school. And then even like there's the possibilities of trips to places like Kenya or France that I'm looking at going on right now. So college has been a really great opportunity, and Sonlight helped me get there.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's Homeschool Helps and Hacks. It's our high school how-to. So hopefully you enjoyed hearing from our mentors and some of their children. And when you walk away today, hopefully you will feel confident in your ability to homeschool high school. Just as a quick reminder, all of our live events will be streamed later in the Sonlight app. So if you want to go back and reference anything again, or ask more questions, you can always do that. I'm so excited to see you all in the comments already. We have people joining us from around the world and around the US right now. In the chat, Jonna and Anne and Christy are in there, so they'll be answering questions. And whatever Lisa, Sheila, and I can get to, we will also put here in the video as well. So let's start with some introductions. Lisa, you're on the top left, so we'll start with you. Do you want to tell everybody about yourself?
I'm Lisa. I'm one of your homeschool mentors. I have 3 children, 2 which I homeschooled from kindergarten through high school graduation with Sonlight. My oldest that was in the video, and then one that is a sophomore in college.
Well, thank you for being here. Sheila, your turn. Go ahead and tell us about yourself.
Sure. I also have 3 kids that I homeschooled. My oldest did go to a private Christian school, but the other 2 homeschooled all the way through. You met Timothy in the video, but they are all out of college and out in the working world.
Well, thank you for being here. I have 2 children. You saw my oldest in the video. She's in 8th grade, so we are just approaching the high school years. I also have a 3rd grader as well, but we're going to focus on high school today. Let's talk about kind of that future planning and setting goals. I've seen a lot of people in the comments already that have middle schoolers, and they're kind of preparing for the high school years. So how do you help your child kind of figure out what their path is, whether that's college, career, military, whatever that's going to be? How do you help them hone in on those interests?
We took a weekend away together between 8th and 9th grade. We brought the computer, we brought the Sonlight catalog, we looked at all kinds of things, and we just kind of talked about things that my kids were interested in, what they were thinking they might do, and made a in pencil plan. So it wasn't exactly what we did, but it was a great way to just have a start. And we just really had some great fun conversation. But because we'd done Sonlight for so long, you know, conversations about big things were not something that was unusual to us. So it was a great time just to focus on them without any distractions and really think about what their life might be, hopes and dreams. And so that was where we started. And they were able to look through the catalog, look at the descriptions, and it was a great way to get a plan in pencil.
For us, we had a constant conversation going about what our kids liked, what their interests were. And we looked for ways for them to explore some of those things. So they did lots of volunteer opportunities to see if that was going to be an area that they liked. My middle son, the one that you met, he participated in a program called ACE, which is architecture, construction, and engineering, because he was thinking about going and becoming an engineer, which he did. But that was something that he did. And then with my daughter, she volunteered at the Mayo Clinic because she thought she wanted to get into medicine, and she ended up being a nurse. So, you know, we let our kids explore things that they thought they might be interested in, but we didn't pigeonhole them. So if that was going to, you know, not work out for them, then that was going to be okay. But at least they went, in high school, they were already thinking about ways, you know, paths that they might take.
Yeah, I think that's great what you both said about, you know, kind of pencil plans and not pigeonholing them. I know that's kind of the approach we've taken too, is that we're going to keep taking all the classes and doing all the different Sonlight levels to give my daughter the most opportunity she has. But obviously at 13, I don't expect her to know what she's going to do with her entire life. But we do have a question from Katrina in the app. And she said, can you give examples or scenarios about how you make choices with your high schoolers about their plans for coursework and activities? What boundaries do you set, and how much do you follow the student's lead? The mentors have already shared some examples like this, but I really benefit from all the examples and stories. So how much of that did you turn over to your student, and how much did you kind of lead when they were trying to figure out their path?
Well, for one thing, some states have kind of like a requirement. There are some classes that you absolutely have to do. So that takes care of some of the, you know, you have to do American history, you have to do American government, some of those things. So those kind of filled in some of the buckets from the get-go. But then there were some areas where we got to choose. And I'll use Timothy as an example again. When he was in, I think it was his sophomore year, maybe it was his junior year, he had done 100 and 400 he was going to do, but we were trying to figure out, you know, what other levels to do. And like Sunny said in her video, there are more levels available than you have time to do. So you have to narrow it down. So I asked Timothy, I showed him the catalog, you know, you have to do this, this, and this. So out of what's left, what do you think you would like to do? And he actually gave it a lot of consideration, and he came back with a really good response. I thought it was really good. He said, Mom, we have studied world history a lot because we had done B and C and G and H, and, you know, we had also done classical conversations, and that was very well covered in the early years. And so he said, but, you know, it seems like everything stops at World War II. And I don't know what happened after World War II. So I really think I want to do 300. And so I can learn what happened after 1945. And so he did that. And that was just a really good reason. And he had buy-in. And I learned a lot that year because history was not my favorite subject when I was in school. I learned to love history, homeschooling with Sonlight, and we had never gone past 1945. So
we looked at our local high school graduation requirements. And while I do not live in a state that had to follow those, I did know that when my girls applied to college, most of the applicants would have followed that program. And we didn't do every single thing the way the public school system did, but I made sure that we could write those kinds of things on our transcript. For instance, here you have to take a class called HOPE, which is Health and Independent Fitness Education. So we made our own health and physical fitness program, and that's what we called it because, again, all the people that she's competing against would have that. 2 years of foreign language is required to graduate here. So we made sure that we covered that. But we covered it in a way that fit us and our values. So that was really the boundary that we set. Our transcript didn't look exactly like a public school student, but we did want to make it similar because we wanted our girls to be competitive with the people coming out of the public school system.
Yeah, I think that's great advice. Yeah, and by the time your child is getting to that high school age, they kind of know, like, okay, like what Sheila said, which programs do I want to do or not want to do? I know my daughter's been giving me her opinion on that for the last 2 or 3 years, what she's most interested in studying. And then Lisa, I love what you said about kind of looking at, what the high schools in your area are requiring. Even if you're not required to do that, it gives you a good framework kind of some of the, especially like you mentioned, foreign language, electives, and things like that you might not be thinking of already if you've been using Sonlight. So I think that's great advice. I know at this point in our house, our goal is just to keep the opportunities open. So we're not saying, okay, this is the career path you're doing and you don't need college for that, so we're not going to get you ready for college or whatever. We're looking at all the options that she may want in a few years, so that way she's ready to apply to college at that point or not, depending on what she decides later on. So let's talk about how we teach Sonlight High School. The curriculum obviously is different. We mentioned in the video the parent guide versus the student instructor's guide. Also, we talked about kind of the mix and match programs. It's a little different than what it is in the early years where you just say, oh, I'm going to do level F this year, and you can just order level F for everything. So let's explain a little bit. Thank you, Jonna, for dropping the names of our programs in there. We're calling them by the numbers, and people are asking what program that is. So if you guys can try to remember to use the title just so people know what we're talking about. But yeah, how do you decide what program you do, or how does that work with the parent guide, teacher guide, mix and match? What does that mean for a Sonlighter?
Well, we did not choose to mix and match because the literature, while it's not always historical related, it does correlate. So when we did American history, we did classic American literature. When we did church history, we did that literature. But I think if you have a student who loves Brit Lit, that's an awesome option. You don't have to do classic literature. And as far as how we use the student guides, I did let my kids schedule their own time. Both of my girls played competitive soccer, and they practiced sometimes 4 hours a day. They were on 2 teams. And so we didn't do school on a regular schedule. And I felt like they needed that time management, just like Rachel said in the video. When we were talking before that, she was like, Mom, I really think the best thing I learned was how to manage myself, because she did dual enrollment. She saw people struggling. She did a Bible school for a year after high school, and she saw people struggling. She's like, they just don't know how to have 4 different teachers with assignments that are due in 2 weeks. How do you do that? And she said, I never struggled with that because I always knew what was there. I knew here's the other things I have to fit in. So the student guide and giving them that responsibility while it's still safe in your home, like there's no harm, no foul if they mess up. You just take it as a learning opportunity, try and start back over, give some new goals. Before they get to a college where no one's holding their hand, Jonna didn't go to college with Michaela, so, it gives them the opportunity to fail in a safe way. So I think the student guide is an awesome resource for your high schooler, your emerging adult, for lots more than just education.
Yeah, that was also something that my kids learned, was to manage their own time. My daughter is also a night owl. I am not. And so I would let her manage her time. My expectation was all the boxes are going to be checked. All the boxes that I expected her to be checked off by the end of the week would be. If not, that meant no going out on the weekend and doing things, no having fun dates with your friends or going to the movies or whatever, because now you're stuck at home doing the schoolwork that you should have gotten done during the week. So a couple of times of that, and they learn to really manage their time. So if they wanted to follow the schedule vertically and do the assignments that were scheduled for day 1, day 2, day 3, they could. But if they chose to just read one book at a time, on Monday they would read the first book, and then on Tuesday they read the second book. I didn't care, as long as by the end of the week they had gotten their work done. The other thing I liked about the student guide was that it did have the questions without the answers. And my guide had the answers. So even if I wasn't reading all the books, and I did not read all the books in high school, we could at least talk about them. And I would look at the questions ahead of time and tell them which questions we were going to discuss. And there's a lot of questions. Remember, Sonlight is a buffet. And if you eat everything on the buffet, you're going to explode. So we did not ask and discuss every single question, but I got to pick and choose. And sometimes I made up my own questions, or sometimes I would just have them give me a plot summary. What's going on in the book? So I liked that they had the questions, and then I could say, okay, we're going to talk about questions 1, 3, and 7 by Friday. Be prepared. And I didn't have to write up what the questions were. They had everything there. They had the schedule. They knew what the expectation was. Now, I will say my youngest is dyslexic, and Sonlight is very robust. And so I trimmed a good amount of the reading for her. And I felt comfortable doing that because my oldest child had gone to a private school, and I saw the amount of books that they were reading at the AP level, and we were reading way more than that. So I was like, okay, even if we cut it in half, even if we cut it by a third, we're still reading way more than what they're reading at this expensive private school. So and having the instructor's guide, you could adapt and cut out and tweak the way you want. That's the beauty with homeschooling. You are in the driver's seat.
Yeah, I love what you guys are saying there about giving your kids independence. You're still in charge as far as what you want to require them to do. So don't feel like because it's in that instructor's guide, you have to do it all. We do have a question from Linda saying if your child has a learning disability, it will probably not be able to do like math or certain subjects like that. She's saying as far as algebra, how does getting him through high school work? Sheila, you mentioned your daughter with dyslexia, you cut some of the reading out. But what do you do if you think your child, because of their learning issue, is not going to be able to learn everything that may or may not be required in schools?
Well, I think that's the great opportunity to tailor the education to your child. So if I had a child who was not able to do algebra, well, what are they going to do? Are they going to open a landscaping business? Well, what do they need to know for that? They need to know how to do invoices and keep a checkbook and those kinds of things. So I think that's a great way to tailor your education. And even in the public school, they have an academic diploma, but they also have a certificate of completion or a different kind of a diploma. And so your homeschool, you can award a diploma because in your homeschool, you required this, this, and this. And that may be job shadowing, that may be interning, that may be anything that you deem credit worthy for your homeschool. So I think that that's an awesome opportunity to work towards your child's strengths and not focus on weaknesses that a regular school would do because everyone has to pass the end of course Algebra 1 test or you cannot graduate from high school. Well, if that's just not the way God made your child, then that's defeat before you even start. So set them up for success by teaching them the tools that they need for the life that they are going to have.
Yeah, and don't feel bad if you help them more than the help that they would get if they were in school. So I read aloud to my youngest until 11th grade. In 12th grade, she finally was like, okay, I got it. But I would joke, I guess I am going to college with you. You know, Jonna didn't go with her daughter, but I would joke, I guess I'm going to college with you because I'm going to have to read to you. And I think she thought that I was serious. So I think she finally was like, I need to try this a little bit more. And so she did finally pick up that, you know, that hard thing that she had not been willing to do. So helping your child in whatever way, if that means that you still take dictation for them because your child can't write well, teaching them to type earlier so that they can type more than they have to handwrite. Typing also helps you with spelling because there's autocorrect and spell check and all those nice things. And if you have a child that is not college bound, like you just know this child is not college material and is probably not going to be an accountant or a college professor or whatever, then like Lisa was saying, think about what kinds of jobs, what kinds of careers they can do, that they can pursue, and then look at the things that you need to do to prepare them for that. So if you have to do a middle school level history class in order to count it as history for high school, I think that's absolutely fine because they are still checking the history box, even if it's not level 500 or 400 or something, you know, that is college prep level. So adapting, this is why you are homeschooling your child. You get to be the authority and the decision maker for what your child's coursework is going to look like. And not everyone is going to be a doctor or a lawyer or even just going to college.
Yeah, great advice there. We've talked a little bit about the intellectual capacity of your student, but we have a question from the app asking about, would you have a 15-year-old do HBL 300 or is that too intense? How do you factor in those social emotional factors in the higher levels if your student's a strong reader? So what do you guys think in high school? Obviously, some of those harder programs dive deep into things that can be emotionally, you know, more difficult or challenging. So how do you determine what's right for your student?
Well, I think you have to use prayer and discernment and know your own student. I mean, my youngest, we never did 300 with her because I knew that her heart was too tender for that. And it was funny when my older daughter was working through it, she came to me and she said, Mom, Sissy can't read this book. She said she just can't read this book. I don't want her to read this book. And so we chose a different path for her. We actually put the history of science level J in as world history on her high school transcript because that was world history and that was more what she was interested in. And I did pull a few books from 300 that I thought were must reads by everyone, like The Hiding Place or some of those. But as far as the whole content, we didn't cover that part in depth for her. So I think you just have to use your best mom gut to find those kinds of things, because of all of the Sonlight that we did, 300, the 20th century world history was definitely the hardest material to cover. I think Rachel would say it was one of our best years because we had such in-depth, great, deep conversations together, but it might not be for everybody. And that's okay. That is okay.
Yeah, I didn't have, none of my three were really sensitive. By the time they got to high school, they were when they were younger. So that was not a concern of mine. I do remember a mentor of mine who was further ahead. She would say that level 300, which is that modern world history, it focuses on the 1900s. So from 1900 to 1999. And, you know, that century is just chock full of all kinds of wars, all kinds of bad things. And so we would laughingly call it the R-rated level, because there are some books in there. I think some of them have been pulled from when she did that level, but some of them dealt with a lot of war, the Vietnam War, and the language that's in that was in that particular book is the way that soldiers talk. Even today, it was not clean. So you have to know your child. You have to know what they are capable of handling. Remember, though, that a book is never as visual as a movie. So if you had to pick a war movie versus reading about war, I would definitely pick reading about war, because the visual, you're going to picture things, but it's not the same as seeing the image on the screen. So it depends on what the maturity level is and what they can tolerate. And one of the things you can do is to read on Goodreads. I use Goodreads a lot to read about books. So you may get some good ideas on there. If you're concerned about a book, you can see what other people are saying about the book. You can ask on the app, I'm going to be doing this level. Are there any books in here that I need to be aware of for a highly sensitive child? And those who have done that before you will share. I mean, that's why we have one another, so that we can help one another out.
Yeah, that's great advice. I love seeing people's feedback on books, whether it's one that I loved or didn't love, seeing what they thought of it. Also, I like what you said there about, anything visual is going to be worse, than reading about it. You can only imagine what you've seen. So I think sometimes as adults, we put more on, oh, my child's going to get this out of it, because we're looking at things with an adult perspective. But if your child has never heard of that or been exposed to that, they may not. But again, by high school, you probably know your children and what they're capable of, what their thoughts are about things. So just keep that communication open with them, regardless. So that way you can talk about any books or decide what's appropriate. We're getting a few questions about using a high school level with more than one student. We talked about that student guide, but if you have more than one student using the same level, do you need to buy duplicates of anything, or how do you handle that? Is one program sufficient for high schoolers? Because we do want them to manage their time. So what do you do in those situations?
Well, for one thing, I did not have two kids using one level. I think Lisa did at the high school level at some point. But one thing that I did when they were younger, I did not buy a second set of books. They just figured out how to share the books. We didn't, if they were going to read the book, then one had it before lunch and one had it after lunch, or one would read it at bedtime and one would find time during the day. So I did not get duplicates of that. If you go to the Sonlight website and you go to the level of the HBL that you're considering, and you click on what's included, actually, if you click on the, what's the tab? Additional items. Additional items. Yeah. So it will list what the consumables are. At the high school level, there aren't a lot. Like you're basically reading and writing. So there aren't many workbooks. There aren't those kinds of things. The student guide is considered a consumable because there are maps in there that they will work with. The maps they will fill in, and it's also their record, so they can check things off. So the student guide is considered a consumable, but each of the levels, I would just recommend looking to see what is listed as a consumable, to see if there's anything in there that you may want to purchase a second one of. But that's one thing I love about Sonlight, is that so much of it is reusable. So you're not just throwing your money away. If you have three, like I have three kids, and I reused my levels with each child. I would repurchase the parent instructor's guide for myself, because that was also my bookkeeping, and I would start with a fresh one. I got the 50% repurchase discount. So for a fraction of the cost, I had a brand new level, basically, and I just replaced whatever the consumables were. But like I said, at the high school level, it's really not a lot.
I did replace my student guides, and when we did it together, they did each have a student guide, because, as they were looking through their questions, if the answer was on page 52, someone might write that, so that they could back up their position or whatever, the mapping, obviously. And then they didn't work at the same pace, because I did allow them to manage their own time. So like Sheila said, one might have just chosen to read this book from beginning to end and then move to the next one while the other one was following, read this chapter and then this chapter. So I definitely think it's value in having each one have their own student guide for sure.
Perfect. Yeah. And we have some questions. One that came from Donna on Facebook. She said, how do you still make connections, especially if you're just bringing a high schooler home? So in her case, I assume she's pulling a child from school. But how do you build relationships and read good books together at a time when your kids really want to be more independent and on their own? What do you guys think about that? We're trying to foster independence, but at the same time, you still want your kids talking to you.
Well, we put a date in our calendars. We met to talk about books on Wednesday and Friday at 3 p.m. And we put the teapot on, and sometimes there was cookies, sometimes there was not, because I'm not a Pinterest mom, but so that was just our time. And it was just a great way to hear my girl's heart, because sometimes we read the book and we didn't really talk about what was in the instructor's guide, but we talked about how the book made us feel or what it reminded us of in our own life. But through those conversations, we fostered a great relationship. My children talked to me about lots and lots and lots of things. Very open, because I think we've just always had that dialogue of talking. But if I was bringing someone home out of high school, I think I would definitely focus on touching base with them frequently, because that's going to be new, talking about school. That's not something they're going to be accustomed to, and that's not going to be a way they're accustomed to processing what they're learning. That's not how you do it in public school. We get in trouble for talking. You go to the principal's office. So I think that's just going to be a learned skill, and patience and grace, just like we say to the newbies at any level. You're learning a new job. They're learning a new job. Everybody needs grace, just abundant grace. And hopefully, by bringing them home, you will find that next level of relationship with them.
Yeah, I think part of it too is why are you bringing your child home? Do they want to be home? Are they asking to be homeschooled? Or are you yanking them out of a school situation because of, maybe they don't, they're being bullied, or their teachers aren't good, or whatever. So I think it depends on, do they already have buy-in? Like, do they want to be home? I think that's going to help a lot if they do. If not, then I would have a heart-to-heart conversation about expectations, and not in a negative way. Not like, I expect you to be up at 8 o'clock and, not that kind of thing, but like, this is going to look different. This is not going to be school at home. This is homeschool. Homeschool is different. So, let's talk about what things you would like to see happen. Like, you don't want to be up at 6 o'clock. You don't have to catch a bus. So maybe you don't start school till 9. My daughter didn't start school till 11. And, that may not work for everyone, but I think the important thing is having an open communication and establishing expectations about, how often are you going to get together and talk about the books? Maybe the child wants you to be more involved. Maybe they don't want to, just take off. Because we started when they were young, we started to let the leash out a little bit at a time. But when you're just starting over and you're bringing your child home, you're starting from a different starting line. And so it's going to look a little bit different. And it's okay to pivot mid-year, okay, we started in this way, but this isn't really working. So let's meet again and figure out, negotiate something different. So it's so much about parenting teens, I think, is about staying on the same side of the river. Like, you are on the same team. You're not trying to get this adversarial relationship. You want to try and maintain the relationship as much as possible. And part of that is just not dying on every single hill, like figuring out which hills you have to die on and which hills you're just like, you know what, that's fine. You want to do school in your pajamas. You want to do school in your room for the first half of the day, but then I need you to come out at lunchtime and show me that you're actually alive, and that, you're going to do part of your school out here where I can lay eyes on you. I want to make sure that you're actually alive. So I think that would be my biggest thing, is to try to maintain the relationship, try and stay on the same side of the river. And because there is life after high school, and you want to maintain that relationship after that.
Yeah, absolutely agree. The way I get my kids to talk to me is I get them alone and I feed them, whether that's going out for ice cream or taking one of my kids to dinner, and both of them just, they pour their hearts out when you give them that one-on-one attention. And so not just making it all about school. Yes, we spend all the time together doing school, but if I feel something's going on with one of my kids, I'm going to take you out for ice cream, or let's go do something just the two of us. So that's what I do with my two. Let's talk about managing the full schedule, though. A lot of high schoolers, you know, they have a part-time job. They might be involved in extracurriculars. Anita is saying, how do you approach that mix of schoolwork, paid work, and then just enjoying being a teen? She's talked to some people who continue kind of that play-based lifestyle into the teen years, and then others who encourage their kids to go get that part-time job. You know, how do you help them manage all of that without maybe helicoptering over them, but also, you know, they're busy in high school?
Yeah, so I talked about letting the leash out. So, you know, it starts in ninth grade. At the beginning of high school, you start giving them a little bit more independence, a little bit more responsibility. And then each subsequent year, as they have earned your trust and have shown that they can be responsible, they can gain more and more of that. Because, you know, in 12th grade, basically they're free. They're done. So you can't hold the reins super, super tight and then like, okay, I'm done. So it has to be a gradual process. I don't think Tommy worked. Well, he had a summer job in high school, but Timothy and Annie both worked. Timothy worked at Chick-fil-A. Annie worked at Trader Joe's, both of them in high school. And we had the conversation that your first job, your most important job, my most important job is to be your mom, and then it's to be your teacher. Your first important job is to be a student, and then you can get a job. So if you cannot maintain your grades, not that, you know, I was really picky about grades, but if you cannot do the work that you have been given to do and do it well with excellence, then sports is not a requirement. You don't have to do sports, so that can go. A job, I don't care if you buy the latest and greatest tennis shoes, you know, Walmart shoes are just fine. That's what I'm buying. So if you want to afford things beyond what I'm willing to pay for, then you may want a job, but school is your first job and you have to maintain that job first. If that starts to slack, then all the other things will get cut before school's going to get cut. And again, it's expectations, communication. The more you can communicate and be open, then you're not catching them, you know, by surprise. If you have to start laying down the ruler, then it's not a surprise to them because you've been communicating it all along.
Yeah, I think that's a great word there. My girls did not work during high school because they did play competitive soccer, but that was not the main thing. We kept the main thing. And that for us was making sure we were at church at a regular basis. Not that we didn't ever miss, but that church was a priority, school was a priority, family commitments were a priority, and then we could do the rest. And if we felt like that wasn't happening, we were not afraid to say, well, unfortunately, that's a consequence, right? And if we don't teach them consequences of their actions, we are failing as our number one job being the mom. So yeah, I think you just have to set expectations and then you have to be willing to follow through. And that is hard. I didn't have to do that so much with my girls, but my son he tested us every single time on a consequence. He got his driver's license on Friday and his car parked for a month on Saturday because he did not follow the rules. And that was terrible. He was like, well, how am I going to get to work? He did have a job. I was like, well, we've been driving you there for 18 months. We'll drive you for 30 more days, you know, because you can't follow the rules. The rules are there for a reason. And it was not a surprise. Wah, wah. It probably hurt us worse than it hurt him because, you know, we don't like to make our children sad, but sometimes we have to make them sad or the world's going to make them really sad.
Yeah, I love what you guys are saying about, we're preparing them while they're in our house before they go out in the world. We are already short on time. So I want to get one more question about that out there, though, because we've talked a little bit about the academic side and, time management and those types of things. But what do they really need to know or learn or accomplish before moving out into the real world? How do you as a parent help equip them for those things, and what things should be on your radar as far as things they should know beyond just academic things?
I think life skills are very, very high up there. All of my kids are now, like I said, out of the house, out into the working world. So I'm very happy to know that they can do laundry, they can cook, and they can clean when they want to. But our levels of cleanliness are different at different stages in life. So those kinds of life skills. I was also really, really happy that that my kids had, my two kids had a financial class because they are now out there and they have to manage a budget. They're only making so much money and they have to pay rent and gas and food and all the things. And if all they ever do is pay for their clothes and that's all they're responsible for, then they're not going to know how to cut that piece of the pie smaller and smaller and smaller as they have to take on more and more responsibility. So I think besides all the academic stuff, that's kind of a given. I think those are the kinds of things that will help them succeed in life, no matter what they do.
It was real important for us to make sure our kids knew how to be good humans, that everyone they meet is made in the image of God and that they need to be treated that way. I trained them that way from the time they could talk. And Sonlight really helped us with that. So whatever you choose to do, I think you need to work is for working for the Lord. You need to give it your all, whether you're the trash picker upper, a ditch digger, or a neurosurgeon. And everyone is valuable. And it doesn't matter how much you know if you treat people poorly. That's all they know about you, is that you are not nice. And so I really tried to make sure before my kids went out in the real world that they knew that not everyone felt that way, but if you're a fountain, this is how you treat people. And life skills, yes, all of those things. But really when it comes down to it, that was our whole reason for keeping our kids home anyway, was to just instill that value in them.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, ladies. We were already, almost done with our time. So for those of you watching, if you had questions about like the logistics of college application and transcripts and all of that, we're going to have to save that for another session. But feel free to drop your questions there in the comments and then again in the replay, and we will answer them there for you as well. Also, make sure you join us next month for December's Homeschool Helps and Hacks. It's going to be all about teaching multiple kids well at the same time. So if you have more than one child and you're trying to figure out how to manage all of that in homeschooling with more than one, you'll definitely want to join us for that. That's going to be on Wednesday, December 14th at 1. All of our other Homeschool Helps and Hacks have been on Thursday, so just be aware of that if you want to watch it live, that you'll need to join us for Wednesday or on Wednesday that week on the 14th. Also, there's a ton of things going on right now at Sonlight. Sonlight's Christmas gift guide items will be on sale, some of them for up to 50% off next week. That's November 21st through the 28th. I know I purchased gifts for my kids and my nieces and nephews from the Sonlight gift guide last year, and everybody loved them. So take a look there. Have your kids fill out their wish list, and you can buy everything on sale next week. Also, Advent season starts on November 27th. So if you have not ordered an Advent unit study yet, make sure you do that so you get it on time and can join with us. I can't wait to see you guys posting your crafts and recipes and all of that in the app. That's always one of my favorite things, is seeing what you guys are doing. You can do those studies in any order. And if you want more information about the latest one, Sheila did a great video in the app as well, so you can look at that. Also, if you go to sonlight.com/Christmas, you can find out about our 25 days of Christmas traditions that we are going to be doing this year. Every day, December 1st through the 25th, Sonlight will be sharing free downloads, crafts, recipes, history lessons, and more. So that way you and your family can learn, have fun, and develop new traditions this holiday season. There's going to be something new each day. So head over to sonlight.com/Christmas to see what is happening that day. And as always, like I said, if we did not get to your question or your comment today, please make sure that you post it in the replay, and our mentors are there in the app ready to answer you. Lisa, Sheila, thank you so much for speaking with me today. And Anne, Christy, and Jonna, thank you for managing the chat for us. And join us next month.